Emmanuel Daniel, spent a number of years at Microsoft. He's now started his own firm.
Then I decided that the opportunity out there to help make buildings, cities, and data centers smart, connected, efficient is a lot more than just Microsoft. Alosener today focuses on digital transformation and advisory services for anybody that wants to make their building smart, connected, sustainable, efficient. We're at an interesting period in time. You are dealing with a situation of how do you make hybrid work? If you're going to say that we are hybrid, the question is, what does it mean? How is that going to benefit the person that is in that situation? Data centers, in some cases, consume more energy than a city does. Gigawatts of energy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Down Low with Joe. I'm here with Louis, and we have a great guest today, Emmanuel Daniel. Spent a number of years at Microsoft. He's now started his own firm. We'll get into all of that. But maybe first, Emmanuel, it's great to have you. Thanks for coming. We run into each other at a lot of events, but it's nice to record something together. Why don't you say hi and give us a little bit of your background, both Microsoft and up until now.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Louis. Pleasure to be on your show. Great to see you folks. And hope your day has been wonderful so far. Brief introduction. Emmanuel Daniel. I had a long career in smart buildings spanning across 2 decades. I've designed and built buildings. I've designed and built cities, focusing purely on human experience and the technology that goes inside them. I've actually worked across 31 countries with over 200 engagements. So any of the buildings out there in Asia or MEA that claim to be smart in many ways would have been touched by me. I had a long career at Microsoft spanning across 13 years. And as part of that career, I led the smart cities and the smart building portfolio. And towards the last few years, I had the opportunity to lead the digital transformation of the East Campus Modernization Program, which basically was Microsoft's largest construction program where they wanted to build a campus. But the core of that campus is how we're able to drive human engagement and human experiences for all the people that come through its doors. And when I say all the people, it refers to both the employees, their friends, their family, contractors, or anybody that has business with Microsoft or would like to visit that campus. Once I completed that program, I moved on to the data center organization, where I was leading digitization, basically how we able to use technology to accelerate the rate at which we're able to build and deliver data centers so that we're always able to meet capacity demands that our customers and our clients would have. Wrapped up all that, and then I decided that the opportunity out there to help make buildings, cities, and data centers smart, connected, efficient is a lot more than just Microsoft. So I decided to leave Microsoft and opened up my own organization called Alosener. Alosener, a lot of people have asked me, what does Alosener mean? I am of Indian origin, and ethnically I am Tamil. So I decided to name it Alosener, which means advisor, because that's what I am traditionally doing. I am helping people make their buildings, cities, data centers, infrastructure efficient, smart, and connected. That's been me.
Yes, excellent. And we'll talk about the new business in a little bit. I think two quick questions, or maybe a two-sided question. One, Microsoft has a very long history with just smart building technology, investments in smart buildings. And some of that, I think, goes back even 8-10 years ago. Maybe without going through that whole history, there's a lot out on the web that you can just read about 88 acres and what Microsoft, the investments made. Maybe a quick catch up there. And then the other one that is interesting, Microsoft really has become a leader on the Azure side. I would say is one of the platforms of choice for a lot of innovative smart building firms building. And that happened a little bit after, but I don't know if it was really as much of a decision of, we've done a lot in our buildings. We've made them more efficient. Here's what we've seen in benefit. Let's help others as a piece that dovetails the overall Azure strategy. But those are two things maybe to catch up our listeners on.
Yeah, great. And those are great points, Joe. So to give you a little bit of the history, one must understand how big and large the Microsoft campus actually is. The Microsoft campus in Redmond is around 500 acres. It's a pretty large campus. Yeah. Pre-pandemic, we used to have anywhere from 40 to 60,000 people that would come into the campus for work. So effectively, it's a small little city. It's a small little city filled with tech folks that come in, build great products, work, collaborate, and drive engagement across both their customers, their clients, and their whole supplier and partner ecosystem. When you build such a big campus for so many people, you obviously have a lot of opportunity to make that campus efficient. And efficiency is not just about cost saving. That's the key here. The efficiency is about comfort. Efficiency is about engagement. It's about driving productivity of that workforce. So Microsoft very early on had huge power needs for the campus of this size. That's when we started saying, how are we able to use those power needs to make our buildings efficient? How are we able to use those power needs to collaborate with our local power generators, our power company, and say, hey, we as a corporate owner of this large of real estate will ensure we're able to consume and forecast the amount of power we need without getting into peak demand surges, which used to happen all the time. People just don't know, what would happen during the day. So that's when we started focusing on efficiency of energy consumption across our buildings. And very correctly, Joe, it was more than 10 years ago that we actually got onto this journey. And when we started doing this, we invested a lot of time on driving and identifying faults, monetizing these faults, prioritizing how these faults get fixed, because in a building, just like any operational environment, you always have faults that will happen throughout the day, throughout the year. You cannot fix everything. You should know what you need to fix. So the monetization of these faults allowed us to prioritize these faults and fix those faults that would have the largest impact to monetary savings that we would get. Now, on one side, we made our buildings efficient. On the other side, we kept our power suppliers happy because, oh, guys, you guys are a great consumer of our power. And the most important equation is the employees coming into the buildings were made comfortable because, for example, on a cold day in Redmond, rather than turning on the heat when everybody walks into the building gets preheated, and by actually preheating the building, you are able to eliminate peak demand surges that would usually occur. This made everybody happy. And this is how the program started off. Now, at that point in time, you'd see there is a lot of content on the internet that talks about 88 acres, our energy saving program. And we were able to hit around 40% energy savings across our portfolio, give or take a few percentages here and there. That's how it started for us. So when people talk to Microsoft about efficiency, energy savings, fault detection, diagnostics, we started it a long time ago and we were so proficient in it. So the next era of smart buildings for us had to be much more than just energy savings.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. It's funny because the 88 acres story, I guess, easiest way to put it, a big ROI component then was energy savings. And the point I always read, and I knew this a little bit, energy is pretty inexpensive in Washington State because there's so much hydroelectric power.
Yep.
I would also imagine that does have some impact on demand charges. Maybe the peaks aren't, it's not necessarily a California style peak, but still to show the ROI that you showed, that's really interesting. And then the other side, the kind of the untold story of the comfort issue. 10 years ago, I don't know that comfort and occupant experience and occupant engagement, tenant, worker, workplace, however you want to frame it, that just wasn't, that didn't resonate as much. But, what I hear you saying is that was actually a bigger deal than the energy savings.
Yep. So this is a great point, and actually, what you said is of note. We in Washington State, we are blessed with great power that is cheaper than the rest of the U.S. And mostly because we have hydropower here. We have sustainable energy sources that we use to consume. Now, in those cases, the biggest question that we always get is, you guys have cheap power. Isn't the cost of doing all these practices more than the amount you'd actually pay the energy companies? And a lot of folks today, when you talk about sustainability initiatives, or for example, let's take the Clean Building Performance Act that's come up in Washington State, or you talk about Local Law 97 that's there in New York. The question that everybody has is, should we just pay the penalties and the fines rather than actually make our buildings efficient? Because the cost to make them efficient is going to be more expensive than what it would be to pay the fines off, right? And that's where the cost angle comes in. Now, when we look at it, we got posed the same questions. You have low cost energy. What is the point of doing this? How much do you save? Is the effort actually worth it? And when you analyze it, you start looking at peak demand. Peak demand is a big deal because of hot and cold weather out here. The amount we would pay for peak demand charges can be very, very high. And all large corporate campus owners or large real estate owners will go through this. So finding a way to eliminate peak demand while ensuring you're able to keep occupancy comfort is really important. And because why? Because, we've already heard so many stories about how loaded our grids are. So anything that we can do to help our power companies better manage the power supply to us and ensure you're not able to pull excessively during peak usages, because pre-COVID, we all would go into the office, right? We all were in the office consuming that. And that allowed them to say, hey, great, this is great that you're able to do this. And because you're able to ensure the amount of power that you consume, we are also able to help you with how much of benefits that we can give you as an outcome of that. Now, the second part of it is around efficiency of the human occupants in that building. What you tend to notice is as your buildings get efficient, the ambient environment or the set point temperatures that you have within that building always tend to be in that comfortable range, right? You don't have extreme cold and extreme hots. So then all of a sudden, ambient environmental conditions for people to work in their surroundings gets very, very comfortable. So unknown to them that we are actually saving energy on one side, and by saving energy, we are able to track their happiness score, in a way, to say that how comfortable are they, how happy are they, and they love to come in and they love to work because we're able to guarantee those ambient environments. Now take it to another level. In addition to temperature, you also have air quality. That's a big impact on human health. You start doing your air quality monitoring where you're saying that, hey, how am I going to ensure the quality of air inside my buildings is good, is great? In certain places, the quality of air should be as good as the outdoor air environment, because once again, in Redmond, you're blessed with clean, fresh air, unless you have forest fires happening somewhere and we get the ash blown in. But if you extend that, because Microsoft has global campuses, extend that to campuses in Asia, in China, for example, then our air quality monitoring and our air filtration systems are able to ensure that quality of air inside the office on a very heavy pollutant-filled day is much, much better and cleaner and safer for health compared to the quality of the air outside of the office. So all these practices eventually led us to creating environments that were the most impactful for humans to perform at their best, both health-wise and collaboration and engagement-wise.
Yeah, fascinating. I was going to ask, as the other thing that touches, being at Microsoft, huge campus, a lot of investment, kind of early adopter, you could argue, in a lot of these tools. So, I mean, just huge campus, fault detection would be very impactful, I would imagine, just given the number of points, the complexity of the building automation systems. But you've seen a lot of technology in the market. On one hand, it's really fragmented. There's real solutions out there, though. I wouldn't say by any means that there's a lot of vendors that are just pushing kind of marketing jargon. They actually have real solutions. But again, it's fragmented. There's some overlap. What's your take on just the state of the vendor landscape? And that can be categories that excite you, areas where you think it's a little overblown. It could just be general takeaways of, it's hard for me as a buyer to figure out certain parts of the market, or it took a long time for us to figure it out, and then we did, and then we were able to kind of jump in. But just be interested in your perspective on the market as somebody who's made a lot of decisions about getting technology into buildings.
So interestingly, Joe, the state of the market for buildings, real estate, physical infrastructure as a whole is actually pretty much the same. And the reason for that is because our Achilles heel has always been everybody makes their own set of products and they believe their products are the best, and then they make that proprietary and they say, if you buy X from me, how about buying A to Z as well? And then because I'm in there, I'm not going to let anybody else come in there. And when you look at buildings or any sort of physical infrastructure, each asset is different. As much as we would like to say that we have the same buildings everywhere, it's not. Our layouts are different. The people using them are different. Now, what has happened is there has been an explosion of IoT device companies out there in the market. 2 decades ago, it was all about BMSs. Everybody used to have BMS. You had the big players that had their core BMS, right? And they said, we own all the points in the building. If you want to add points to that building, fantastic. We would love to give you more points. Here's a bill, and this bill is probably going to cost you an arm and a leg. So people are like, whoa, hold on. Guys, don't touch that BMS. Don't add points. Walk away now. It's not worth the effort. Then after that period came the rise of IoT companies that said, hey, you know what? We can track and monitor everything. You can't improve what you can't measure. And then you had all these device companies that came in. You literally had a sensor for everything. You name it. You could buy a sensor off. Each sensor had their own data formats. Each sensor had their own protocols that they would use. So now as a buyer, you're like, whoa, which sensor do I buy? Should I buy sensor X, sensor Y? How do I integrate that data? Now, added to that, the life of the FM manager didn't get any easier, because rather than having a centralized dashboard, he or she is now looking at 10 different dashboards. I've got a BMS dashboard, I've got a data dashboard, I've got an efficiency dashboard, right? And all of this in different data formats. So that way, even though our vendor pool has gone up, which is a very healthy sign of how our industry has been progressing, the collaboration and the communication between our vendor ecosystem has not improved that much. Hence, you have variety of data formats, variety of data products, variety of integration protocols, and security, which has always been something that was not very influenced on, which now is, right? Cybersecurity within physical real estate has become a very, very intense topic of discussion because of the threat that we have, was also not actively discussed. So if you're a buyer, and when we were doing our digital transformation programs and the advice I give to customers, the ultimate choice is, how do I choose? Because I've got 10 different suppliers that make indoor air quality monitors. Right? Each one has your own little API package. Each one has your own installation package. And added to that, some are wireless, some are wired, some have PoE power, some have battery power. So the choices have gone up, but there is no clarity in terms of what choice makes sense for who. And added to that, one of the point I will put in, which I think was the explosion of AI coming onto the scene. Buildings have always been doing predictive maintenance. We have been talking about predictive maintenance for generations now, right? What has changed from when we were talking about it, trying to do to now, is the quality and the granularity of data has tremendously improved with the explosion of measuring devices, sensors, and all these components coming in. What that has led to is a race where suppliers want to own data from buildings that we own and manage, or you own and manage. Now the question is, buyers are now saying, well, hold on, isn't that my data? Shouldn't I have access to that data and have ownership of that data? I want to store that. And then all of a sudden, no, oh, hold on, guys. We're going to store that data for you on the cloud. And then all of a sudden you have to worry about, suppose a few years after that, I find a better product in the market and I would like to do an upgrade and switch over to a new supplier. Oh yeah, sure you can. You just have to pay us to download your own data, and we cannot innovate with that data, which is the hardest part of it all, right? It's like, hold on, it's my data. I'm paying you for a service, and then I have to pay you again to consume my data. That's another problem that has seemingly crept into our industry, which I think really needs to change.
100%. And going back to Microsoft, when you first started this whole journey within developing their smart buildings and smart cities program, if you were to do it now, would you say it would be harder given the fragmentation, the potential need for consolidation, just where the industry's at versus where you did it in 2013 or 2012?
Mm-hmm. So I definitely would say harder, not because now tech and the growth of tech and all that coming in has definitely contributed to it. More tech doesn't necessarily make it easier. More tech makes it more confusing, makes it more challenging. Less tech means less innovative opportunities and less ideas, but more tech means, how do you prioritize? What do you start with? Is the cost even worth it? The other angle that goes into these projects that is also extremely crucial is demographics. You always have changing workforce that come into buildings, and these preferences start to vary. So people talk about multi-generational workforce all the time. Now, as you go through each generation, there is a huge generational shift as to who the majority composition of the workforce is, right? And this composition of the workforce is directly going to affect your physical designs, your experiential designs, and the usage of that space. Now, added to that, you throw in a pandemic where everybody is working from home, and now you're saying, hey guys, pandemic is over, let's all come back and collaborate. So for two and a half years, our collaboration patterns have changed. Now we're trying to say, hey, how are we going to drive more innovation? You've heard a lot of talk about the whole accidental discoveries, or the need for people to bounce ideas of somebody else, right? And the importance of doing it in an ad hoc style compared to setting up a meeting, going on a Teams or Zooms or a Google call. The need for spontaneous connectivity. Hey, Joe, what's happening? Hey, Joe, I had this idea, what do you think about it? Or let's say, you see someone, Lewis, and said, hey, you were talking about it yesterday. I got this revelation. Why don't you try it this way? This doesn't happen in structured meetings, right? All this happens in unstructured meetings. Now, who has been mostly impacted by this has been the Gen Zs. Now, you had millennials in the workforce pre-COVID, which are the majority, but now the Gen Zs are starting to grow up. Behaviors, attitudes are different. So now you are fundamentally designing experiences for a different set of people whose habits and behaviors have been influenced by the pandemic, have been influenced by working at home, have been influenced by sitting in front of the camera the whole day. That is going to make it different and harder as well.
Yeah, and I think when you think about previous generations, there's decades of trends and data to show what the environment looks like in buildings, and even within the last 4 years, I mean, it's almost 5 years. It's almost 5 years since COVID, which is insane. There just seems to be like there's a rapid pace of just different trends, how Gen Zs want the workforce to look like, the debate between return to office, different mandates, etc., like that. Just going back to the data piece, because that was really interesting, because you go to any conferences, the same ones that we go to, there's usually a panel about data and data stuck in a building, who owns the data. What's your thoughts on that? Like, if we're thinking about you as a previous owner or working for an owner, I assume the preference is for Microsoft to own the data, right? But for the industry in general, like, what makes sense for the industry? Like, if we're thinking about moving the industry forward, do we both own the data as the technology vendor and also the owner, or I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and that's a great question, Lewis, because I still think a lot of people still have questions around this. And the questions the questions are backed by a little bit of lack of clarity, because you are entering both into a contractual discussion as to, hey, in terms of the service that you are providing, what are the rights of that service, and as the outcome of that service, what do I own and control? You're getting into a cost discussion where, when someone wants something and you really don't want to give it, you say, sure, but that's going to cost you 1x more or 2x more. And they're like, oh, well, really? Then it's like, okay, you know what, I don't want it, let's just go the low cost option. And the third part is folks not understanding the power of that data and the volume that they would have. We've been hearing a lot about ChatGPT and cloud and Gemini and all these components coming in. We've been talking about them being used in the enterprise today. And there has been so much of rhetoric around the quality of the results compared to us using the public services and the quality of results compared to us using enterprise services. Now, yes, you have security, you have performance, you have all these things start to fit in. Fundamentally, you need to train your models on high quality data, which has always been the ethos of us in the buildings world. When we used to do predictive analytics or predictive maintenance, we used to spend a lot of time and effort quantifying systems, quantifying data points, defining faults, and being able to collect fault and failure data. So we use that as training for the algorithm we built. Now, with these models coming in, the quality of the algorithms have tremendously gone up. The data demands and needs in terms of variables have gone up. But one fundamental thing that has not changed is the quality of high quality data. It's just non-negotiable. Now, if I, as the owner, have to build some innovation tied to it, if you're a city, you would love to have that data, because as as a city, you know what services you want, you know what services you're going to innovate and experience on, and you should have full control over that data. If you have to consume that data of a service provider who's going to charge you for that data, because ultimately their services get better using the data that you generate. So
100%.
whether both should own it or both should consume it, as the owner of the property where that data gets generated, the owner should absolutely have access to own that data. And the other thing, which pivoting back to Joe's question, Lewis, was what has not changed? Vendor lock-in, okay, as a problem, has not gone away, right? In fact, today I would even argue vendors have come with a more exorbitant menu list to say, hey, you want a sensor? We have all the sensors that you would ever need. You know, don't look at anybody else. You want networks? We have all the networks that you would ever need. And guess what? If you buy our sensors, we give them to you at a price that no one else can compete. But then you are embedded and indebted to their network, to their data standards, to their integration protocols, to their proprietary communication protocols, and how they use and manage your data, right? You don't have that the flexibility to mix and match, where in fact, mixing and matching, okay, has always been one of our key goals, right? Driving heterogeneous landscapes within our environments.
And service provider lock-in is the other one too. Just, you know, like you have to go to a certain service provider. Yeah, Lewis, I think you had a question.
But when we're talking about data, and you mentioned it there, that's when you look on LinkedIn, there's just an enormous amount of technology vendors within the tech space, AI applications, various different focuses, and it's cool, right? And then sometimes I think with what I'm seeing on LinkedIn within the ecosystem about AI, it's kind of with rose-tinted glasses, because until we reach a stage where we do have the data sets, AI is just a pipe dream at this stage. I just wanted to get your thoughts as to whether I'm right, I'm wrong, or maybe there's a middle ground there.
No, you're right, Lewis. And I think, like all things, there are progressive steps that you have to get into. And the first step is identifying what do you need AI's help with, right? Yeah. And to do that, if you're talking about building operations, if you need to help optimize your building's performance, curate your services in those buildings to the occupants that come and use your buildings or provide the services in that building, you are going to need operational data. And the operational data is not just going to be readings and monitoring. The operational data is going to be anomalies, failures, faults, type of actions, type of tickets that get generated, and how we're able to train our models to be able to respond to those queries or help mitigate those queries. Right? I still think that there is a shortage of people focusing on quality versus quantity. Building generate millions of hits a day. You know, and I tell people all the time, there is no shortage of telemetry data from buildings. You know, you probably, actually, we have a lot of it, right? It's just that we haven't classified it properly that would allow us to use it. Now, what we need to start focusing on, and a lot of people have started doing it, in fairness, is starting to organize and classify their building data appropriately. Use that to feed training models where now buildings are queryable. Now we're talking about queryable buildings operationally. We're talking about queryable designs. What did I use in XY data center or in XY building? You know, who's that part from? Where is that asset coming from? Now, in this, one trend that I'm seeing that is becoming really evident amongst owners of real estate and assets is on the importance of asset management. Asset management was always been, oh, you know what, we have the assets, you know, I'm sure we'll maintain it. But now, defining asset data models. Okay, inside the asset data models, defining the metadata for that particular asset. Okay, understanding its operations, understanding its warranties, understanding its documentation. The has become such an important topic because all of a sudden, the ownership of assets has gone up. And why has it gone up? Because we don't build less, we build more. We build different class of real estate, but we're actually building more. And people have realized, man, I really have to manage the assets. How do I do that? It's through data.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I was thinking we have a lot that we wanted to talk about. We might have you back another episode in a couple months, just because there's just a lot more that you can share. I think data centers is an episode we could dive into, just your views, your work there at Microsoft. But maybe in the last couple minutes, do you want to share a little bit about what you're doing now with Alosener? Where the business is, where you want to take the business, anything you want to share, and then I think that'll be a good way to just both what you're doing today and looking forward.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you, Joe. My fundamental reason for founding Alosener was to be able to extend the services that I could provide beyond Microsoft, and the reason for that is because buildings are universal. You have buildings everywhere, right? And I didn't want to be confined to buildings only owned by my employer. I believe all buildings should benefit because all humans should benefit. Alosener today focuses on digital transformation and advisory services for anybody that wants to make their building smart, connected, sustainable, efficient, from defining technology roadmaps to driving sensorization and data transformation, and even asset management. If someone comes and says, hey, how do I manage all the assets that I have? What should I do? Who should I work with? We come in and we present a very neutral view where we always view the interests of the owner operator, who is bringing us in. That way they could rest assured that the advice that they get is always favoring them. We don't take sides with the vendor or the supplier, because ultimately, if the client benefits, so does the entire supplier and partner ecosystem. In addition to that, I've always been a big proponent of data ownership. I've always been a big proponent of collaboration and seamless flow of data. So I'm also in the process of seeing whether I could build my own platform that would allow me to provide services to my customers, where I'm able to take their data, classify that data, use that data to build AI models, where ultimately my vision of creating buildings alive would come through. And as part of that journey, I'm also looking at potential companies that I could acquire, or that would collaborate with me on this journey, because I truly believe we are not far away from self-managing and self-sustaining buildings. In fact, people would argue they already have them today. I believe they can be much better than where they're at today, benefiting all of the humans that use and occupy them.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I would put the tech real estate and also just commercial real estate in completely different buckets, though, because when you look at the use cases of the likes of Microsoft with the Redmond campus, you've obviously got Google, others. The case studies are just way ahead, and they started way earlier than any other big owner occupier or just in general REIT. With your goal, where you're at now versus where you'll be in 2 years, what's the path look like with that, with potentially acquiring businesses and also partnering with others?
So I believe partnership is fundamental. I've formed partnerships with multiple companies today. I would definitely grow my partnership ecosystem. I talk to advice companies, I talk to platform companies, I talk to asset management companies, I talk to real estate service providers. What I would like to build on is 2 years from today, I would love to sit on operational data from at least 4,000 to 5,000 buildings. Use that operational data to build my own custom models that would allow me to make buildings come to life. That's what I'm trying to do. Now, the challenge with that is, and this is probably something that we may delve into sometime later, is the cost of storing that data. And people are waking up to that reality today. When you look at storage costs for data, like, whoa, what just happened? I thought everything goes in the cloud. It's supposed to be cheap and it's supposed to be worth nothing. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, by the way, all the compute services you are buying is X, but the storage cost to store all your data is X squared, or X to some exponential power that is there. And that reality is now sinking in. So people are like, whoa, hold on. Why is it so expensive to store data in the cloud? And that is triggering off an entire chain of events where people are saying, "No, I'll store my own data. I'll manage my own data. Should I have my own little private edge DC somewhere?" Right? Which is another trend I don't think people would have expected. They thought everything is cheap in the cloud. Just keep dumping your data there till you get the bill, and you're like, whoa, right? And you can check this up. Your storage costs have actually gone up, right? And they're becoming very expensive. So, I have to deal with that as well. If I have to build a great AI model, I need to be able to store and manage that data. And that is where my investments, my acquisitions, and working with partners that would allow me to optimize storage of data and farm that data all become critical on this journey.
Emmanuel, real quick question. Do you think the data costs will continue to go up? Do you think that they've kind of jumped a little bit and they're plateauing? What's your thought? Because you could argue the data out of buildings, there's a lot of data. It's probably growing. Of course, you're developing new data every day, but I don't know that we're going to see like a 2x or 5x of the amount of data coming out of a building, though I think I could be convinced there. So on the other side, though, is it just going to be more expensive moving forward, or did we have a bump and it's plateauing?
So I would definitely not say it's plateauing.
Okay.
The reason for that is very simple. We're at an interesting period in time. Why do I say that? Is because you have folks that have mandated return to office, RTO, 5 times a day, come back. You had folks that always had return to office at some point in time. You have folks that are encouraging hybrid. If you actually look at what's going on in the real estate world today, and I would put data centers in there as well, you are dealing with a situation of how do you make hybrid work? What does hybrid mean? So for someone, hybrid may be, going into the office 2 days a week or 3 days a week. For someone, hybrid may be going to the office 2 hours every day. I just like to go there, have a cup of coffee, meet my friends, have a chit chat and come back. For someone, hybrid may mean I only go to the office for key events or specific events. Other than that, I don't need to go into the office. We've always had 100% mobile workforce at some point in time, Now the question is, if you're going to say that we are mandating return to work, and some people say, hey, we are hybrid, the question is, what does it mean? How is that going to benefit the person that is in that situation? Now, on this particular case, your storage needs will always be there. And ultimately, everybody is in it to be able to drive, to be able to make money off it and to be able to be profitable to it. So I would say storage costs would grow up because of two big things. Your rising energy costs, which have always been going up. You have your inflation, your operational challenges, your people costs that's going to come in, and the volume of data that is going to get generated. Now, will it stabilize off in the future? Maybe. But this now comes back to the fundamental question is, who are your cloud services providers today? And if you look at it, the answer comes down to 4 or 5 people that dominate the market, right? Hence your rise of the hyperscaler. And 2 decades ago, it was all about private data centers, right? Everybody had their own little private data center. He who manages best saves the most money. So now with this situation, with all the power being concentrated with a few hyperscalers and the data generation growing up exponentially and device manufacturers also growing up, I don't see it stabilizing anytime soon, but in the future, it may have. We have to go up before we finally say, you know what, guys, I think enough is enough. Let's start to come down.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, I think I saw something recently with OpenAI and Microsoft, and just the cost to OpenAI if they didn't have that relationship when it comes to data centers is just astronomical.
That's a great point, Lewis. And if you just look at what's been happening, the size of cities and the size of data centers. When you have a city, and these data centers in some cases consume more energy than a city does, right? And I'm not talking about hundreds of thousands of people using them, maintaining them. You're talking about a few thousand people. Many of them being remote, a few hundred people probably being on site. The infrastructure landscape is fairly small compared to hundreds of acres. You don't need hundreds of acres. Probably 100 is what you look at. And then you look at the power consumption today data center guys are talking about gigawatts of energy. When has a city needed gigawatts of energy, right? And that is the difference you're now dealing with.
Yeah, I think the OpenAI Microsoft data center that they're planning to build is going to require 5 gigawatts of power for 2 million AI chips, which just is just insane.
During the earlier days, semiconductor companies, when they would set up their fabs, would need a lot of energy, right? And when we would look at those energies, say, wow, you need that much of energy, right? And this is hardcore manufacturing. Now, data centers, where we're talking about providing services to end customers, need that much of energy. So you, me, and everybody else can enjoy our cloud services without even realizing how much of energy it takes to provide those services for us.
So what you're telling Joe and I is that we're in the wrong business. We need to go into co-location data centers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's we should, I mean, it's a hot topic though across our industry too. Something we should definitely expand on more. Yeah. Go ahead, Lewis.
Yeah, we'll have to get you back, Emmanuel. We've obviously just deep dive too much in different areas, but this is great. Let me ask you a final question just to wrap up. 2023, there was a trend called survive till 25. 2024, you didn't see a lot of technology adoption. Like the majority of our clients, which are technology vendors, are saying it's very challenging to move the needle in terms of sales cycles, budgets are getting pushed. What's your perception of what 2025 looks like for the industry? Like, are we going to see what we expected to see coming out of COVID, where technology is being pushed into buildings? People are understanding why this makes sense. There's obviously costs that the ROI makes sense, or is it going to be another lull in terms of the year?
I wouldn't say it's going to be a lull. In fact, I would say 2025 is going to be the year where we all start rediscovering what makes sense for our landscapes and prioritizing what makes sense. It's not going to be the year of buying every known device on the earth and being able to record data for no apparent reason just because IoT boomed. It's not going to be the year where we're going to see large, huge corporate campuses being built out because we want to show how much we love our employees by having buildings. But it will probably be the year where we're going to start to prioritize the most important technological investments. I would say one is, how do we take ownership and manage the data? Two, how do we have visibility over the assets in our portfolio, and how are we able to ensure these assets are performing as efficiently as they should? Green energy efficiency, that's always there. It's probably going to be a lot more accelerated in terms of saying, guys, if people are operating look, it's very easy for a machine to do well if everything is stable. But when you're bringing in hybrid workforce and you're bringing in changing load profiles across the day, the machine actually works a lot harder, because it has to keep changing its optimal settings as the crowd goes up and crowd goes down. Okay, if everything is stable, it's great. So the whole aspect of managing these assets is going to become key as well. The other part I would say is going to be on digital twins and visibility. We are going to see more builds of data centers because our hunger continues. We're going to see more renovations and retrofits of existing buildings and assets. The semiconductor industry is booming, so they will grow, and to grow they have to build as well. But what will change is, how am I going to have greater visibility over the build, because I have to deliver quicker to capitalize on the needs. So using twins, which people thought, what's the benefit of a twin? Now, digital twins, digital commissioning, life site tracking of construction, seamless handover to operations, those kinds of things will become active topics of discussion. I know folks that would say, I can do everything on an Excel sheet. So could our grandfathers and our forefathers. But there's something called evolution, where we say we're able to do better, faster, cheaper, and more reliably. And that's where those kind of technologies will start to kick in.
Yeah, and I think just before we wrap up a bit, I know Microsoft were, again, pioneers when it comes to really being ahead of the curve when it comes to digital twin. I know there was a technology vendor out there that used, I guess there's there's a feeling out there based on the conversations I have, and Joe, jump in here if you've heard different. The maturity of the knowledge and change management required for digital twins is the biggest question mark, I think. But you're saying maybe in 2025 we'll start to see people really take that on.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
okay.
Absolutely right.
Cool.
I would even add, Lewis, I think the understanding of what a digital twin actually is, if you even look at the narrative over the past 3 or 4 years, people thought digital twins were fancy 3D models of everything, right? And then all of a sudden they said, well, hold on, we have 3D models, why do I need this? Then along the way, they said, no, digital twins is about me being able to look at operational data in real time. And the argument is, but we have operational data in real time. What's going on?
Right.
Where I think industry started realizing the value is the overlapping of 3D visualization with live telemetry data and the intelligence that flows from it, allowing us to see interactions, behaviors in life site 3D environments, and using that for tracking, for commissioning, for monitoring, and for responses. As where it suddenly hit this is what a digital twin is. We never had these operational insights and these ability to track it like this. Why didn't somebody tell me this is what you guys meant? You're like, we tried. So I think that era of understanding has happened, and now when people have understood it, their demands will get a lot more clearer. So I would say suppliers would be required a lot more to define their products and services better, because the owner operators have become a lot more intelligent in terms of what is possible with technology. And that took a little bit of a lull during COVID, in all honesty. But over the past couple of years, with all the priorities changing and our behaviors changing, I would see that resurgence coming back in 2025.
Cool. Well, like I said, we'll get you back on maybe end of Q2, and we'll do a pulse check as to how 2025 is going, and we can tie in data centers, which we didn't get time for. Emmanuel, this has been great. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it. It's a really busy time. This is recording just before Christmas. Probably go out sometime early in the new year. So thanks for doing it.
Yeah, thanks so much. It was great. It was fascinating, and we'll have you on again to talk more.
Excellent. Thank you, gentlemen, and wishing you guys and all your listeners and your viewers a Merry Christmas and happy holidays.
Thanks.
Absolutely.